Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending the third webinar of the Higher Education in the context of Bangsamoro Organic Law, also known as the HECBOL Project of the Commission on Higher Education. This is in partnership with the Ministry of Basic, Higher, and Technical Education of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. We are broadcasted live via HECBOL Facebook page and YouTube channel. I am Jean Hesuro and I will be your moderator for this afternoon. Our webinar is entitled Identifying and Managing Mental Health Issues in the Virtual Classroom, a session to prepare BARMM higher education institutions. This is part of the CHED-HECBOL Project's capability building activities for higher education institutions in BARMM. This webinar aims to orient the faculty members and administrators of higher education institutions in BARMM on mental health issues as they transition to conducting virtual classes and suggest interventions to coping mechanisms in this time of crisis, especially in the context of education. To formally open our webinar, please help me welcome Director Nelly Z, the Director of the CHED-HECBOL Project.
Thank you, Jean. Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for tuning in live on CHED-HECBOL's FB page and YouTube channel. We are also live streaming on CHED's Facebook page and the BARMM Ministry's MBHTE Facebook page. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the presidents, the deans, the heads, the administrators, the faculty, and students in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, my colleagues in the Commission on Higher Education, and our partners from the Ministry of Basic, Higher, and Technical Education, all school officials, and to all our viewers and followers. Again, thank you for watching and joining us live this afternoon. We appreciate all the love and the support. It is my honor to welcome all of you to HECBOL Online. This is our third webinar. As you very well know, this pandemic has really changed the way we do things. Originally, all of HECBOL's activities and trainings are face-to-face, but we have to innovate and change. Thus, we now have this virtual classroom training. Before I proceed further, please allow me to acknowledge the production team, the CHED-HECBOL team. All of these are made possible because of the efforts made by these beautiful and handsome individuals, Jean, Eden, Yani, and Epep. Congratulations to all of you. I am very proud of how you've handled the situation. We started with 200 followers 2 weeks ago. Now we have almost reached the 2,000 mark. Just last week, we have also reached more than 50,000 viewers. Of course, this is far from the 2,000 followers of CHED's FB page. Still, we are very much grateful and thankful to all of you. As the saying goes, baby steps first, little by little, let's celebrate the tiny victories, for that is what will make us stronger. For this afternoon, the focus of the discussion is about mental health issues in the virtual classroom. This is an important topic because colleges and universities need to prepare and provide mental health services to their virtual students. Online student services are required. We see students exhibiting signs of mental health problems even before COVID. How much more now? I'm sure a lot of students are experiencing issues from anxiety to depression to anger. Therefore, we really need to support mental health in the classroom. We need to know how to respond to a mental health crisis. I am very sure that our three speakers are very qualified to discuss these mental health issues and problems. I have known all of them. They are very good psychologists and counselors who have assisted CHED in their capacity as IPOT members and school officials. In other words, they are very much involved in higher education. So I'd like to thank them for accepting our invitation. Dr. Aimee Guarino of the Salle State University, Dr. Ericson Batican, who is also a kagawad and in charge of the mental health of Barangay Panakan, and of course, Dr. Nelly Limbadan. She is the Assistant Dean of Ateneo de Davao University. As an end note, I want to express my gratitude on behalf of the CHED-HECBOL Project. I hope you continue to watch our future webinars. We are live every week, every Wednesday starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Usually it's a 2-hour show, so please join us. Follow us also on our HECBOL FB page and subscribe to our HECBOL YouTube channel for some updates about higher education, about CHED activities, and of course other reminders. Again, we are deeply appreciative of all BARMM HEI officials who are here watching this afternoon not only to learn, but at the same time contribute vibrantly in the discussion from which I am sure so many useful ideas will emerge. I express my sincere thanks to all the many individuals from CHED and MBHTE. Let us continue to contribute to the success of our higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Nelia. To those who just tuned in, welcome to Identifying and Managing Mental Health Issues in the Virtual Classroom, a session to prepare BARMM higher education institutions, the third webinar of the HECBOL Project of the Commission on Higher Education. If you have questions, kindly send them through the comment section below. We will entertain them after the short talks of our resource speakers. We have invited 3 speakers for this afternoon who will discuss common health issues among higher education students, counseling and other interventions, and the best practices or tips for administrators and teachers in detecting or handling students with suspected mental health issues in the virtual classroom. To begin, let me introduce our first resource speaker for this afternoon. He was an associate professor of the psychology department of the Ateneo de Davao University for more than a decade. He was also the Director of External Affairs of the Center of Psychological Extension and Research Services, also known as COPERS, of the same institution from 2008 to 2011. He is a licensed psychologist, psychometrician, and teacher. He finished AB Psychology, Masters of Science in Psychology, and Doctors of Philosophy in Clinical Psychology. His practice started in 2007 at YC Neuropsychiatric Center. He has served as an expert witness in legal proceedings, both civil and criminal cases. Also, he is a consultant at the DSWD's Reception and Study Center for Children, Bethany Homes of Abused Girls, De La Serna Custodial Center, and De La Rosa Psychiatric Center. He is currently the president and psychologist of Sunnyvale Early Childhood Learning Center, a school catering not just to regular students, but also to children with special needs. He is also a kagawad of Barangay Panacan, Davao City, where he is also the head of mental health programs. He is a member and a certified clinical psychologist of the Psychological Association of the Philippines and an international affiliate of American Psychological Association. He is a co-author of the book College Psychology and the Psychology Board Study Guide. Presently, he is a full-time clinician at Dr. Ericson D Batican Psychological Center, doing assessment and intervention to patients and clients. His experience as a clinician spans for almost 15 years now. He has presented researches abroad such as the Asian Regional Union of Psychological Societies Convention at Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok, Thailand, the International Congress of Psychology Convention in Berlin, Germany, and in Cape Town, South Africa, and the International Convention of Child and Adolescent Psychopathology at Roehampton University, London, in the United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Ericson Batican. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon to all the viewers. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the invitation. And as a first speaker, I'll be talking about the first topic for today, the shift to remote learning, the challenges of educators and students, because we all know that this pandemic has really affected the different sectors in our society. It challenged and it has shaken the country and probably the world, our political system, our health system, as well as our educational system. So I think it's a concern for most educators and also students how to cope with this very unique setting that we are in right now. And the researches about this mental health in the virtual classroom is practically very limited as of the moment. So to begin with, I'd like to start with what are the effects of this COVID-19 pandemic in the educational system, particularly the higher institutions in the Philippines, particularly in Mindanao and the Bangsamoro region. So as an effect, the government has mandated to close temporarily all schools, including the higher educational institutions, and prepare them to transition to remote learning. It's quite a little bit of shock for most of us, but we don't have a choice because health is the primary concern of our government to protect our educators, teachers, as well as our students. And as a result, teachers and educators are forced to do lectures utilizing technology and applications such as Zoom and Google Classroom. They become suddenly the new norm in the delivery of lessons because they are being seldom used prior to this, but now it is considered a necessity to use these technologies. And administrators also are really having a difficulty identifying students, those who are in need of technologies like laptops and stable internet connection. And luckily for some institutions, the one that I know, especially Ateneo de Davao University, have provided their students and especially their faculty and staff these technologies like laptops and of course Wi-Fi connection for stable internet connection. And also, as a result, students struggled to adjust from face to face. We are used to this kind of setup for so many years, since elementary, high school, and even in college. But this pandemic has forced us, many students, to switch to technology-assisted learning in their own unique setting at home. So we have different unique settings at home. Some they have their own private room. Some they share a common space at home. So they have to really adjust. And not only administrators, educators, and students are affected with this sudden shift, what we call remote learning or virtual classroom, but also parents and family members will have to adjust in the new setup to help the students or the student who is a member of the family. And the pandemic definitely has redefined our teaching and learning strategies. We need to adapt, we need to be flexible, we need to adjust. And most universities, they develop those subjects being offered into online courses. Of course, before we are already familiar with online courses, and some of us have taken some online courses before. But the higher institutions, they because of the pandemic, they were forced to offer these subjects and translate it into online courses with the help of the technology, of course. And it's making the educators and the students more dependent on technology, especially the connection to the internet. And I suspect and I also predict that it will become the new normal. And so before we try to a little bit downplay the reliability and the quality of online courses, now we don't have a choice but really to adapt into it. And then there's also a changing role of the educator from a teacher. It's not just in the face-to-face classroom setting. It's always the delivery and the transmission of knowledge from the professor or from the teacher to the students. But now, our role as educators has been expanded tremendously. We are not just going to be uh, transmitting or delivering the lesson or the knowledge or training the students, but we are also going to facilitate learning with the use of technology. And in that context, we are dealing with students who are a very unique group of people, probably different from those hippies in the 1970s. They are being considered or labeled nowadays as Generation Z, students that are defined by technology, meaning to say they are more comfortable with the use of computers. And most of the time, they spend number of hours doing homework or classwork, searching the internet and researching the internet for their assignments. So they are more adept to this kind of technology as compared to their teachers. So how are we going to deal with this kind of group of students, and how are we going to meet the demands with the use of the new technology, especially for all the teachers and professors teaching in the educational institutions? So those are some of the questions that we need to address. And of course, as we go and then transition to this new kind of setting, there is no perfect strategy, and every day presents a new set of challenges. Sad to say, there are limited researches for this, and there are no standard best practices on how to go about, doing virtual classroom. We struggle, and we encounter a lot of challenges every day, and then we learn from those difficulties and problems we encounter every day. And what would be the challenges and the effects of this transition to most of the students? Number one is that because of the restricted socialization, school-related activities like sports and proms and even graduation have become also virtual. So this is actually the first time in my lifetime. This is the first time that I have witnessed that graduation is being like broadcast online. So how does it make me feel as an educator? Well, it's kind of we need it's kind of it's there's a feeling of I don't know, maybe it's a little bit different from the usual graduation that we have attended in the previous years, like we were in elementary or high school or even few years back. So there's a little bit of adjustment, so that we can adapt to this new kind of setting. And of course, when we adapt to this kind of technology and this kind of virtual classroom or remote learning, the students will have to adapt to new learning styles. They are used to hearing the voice of their teachers, and then it's always a face-to-face instruction. And now it's the internet, it's the computer, and sometimes we encounter a lot of technical problems. So listening and then the visual, seeing your teacher on your laptop, there's still a sense of it's not normal for most of us, especially for the students. They really have to adjust with this kind of situation. And then some of the students who are in the process of writing their research are now confused on how to go about their research, especially if it involves face-to-face accumulation of data. And now they don't have a choice, since we promote social distancing. Going online survey would be the best thing to do. So how are they going to finish and then retrieve the data and then finish in general the research? That would be some of the challenges that they are facing right now. And then instead of face-to-face interaction, they are spending more time on the internet and of course with computers. And some of the students, this is a reality for most of the students in the university, that they have part-time jobs to earn some form extra income for them to sustain their study. But some of them have also lost their part-time jobs. That's affecting their financial capacity. And also, this is the most important thing, those with pre-existing mental health and issues or emotional issues, this pandemic can also trigger those vulnerable students, and not only students but maybe also some teachers and university staff. Um, and how about the teachers and educators? What would be the difficulties that they're facing right now? Now that we have to shift to remote learning, some of them, regardless of age, they have to learn this new form of technology, and some of them are not really comfortable with this kind of setup because they have to relearn or learn this new form of instruction. And then some of them will have to reconfigure how to conduct tests and assessments. This is a very important part in the delivery of the instruction, because there would always be quizzes and assessments, and most of the teachers are not really familiar with online assessments or tests, so they have to find ways on how to control confidentiality and how to conduct the tests and assessments. And another one is also reduced contact hours. This is physical contact hours. But when you're doing virtual classroom, it doesn't have to be still the same contact hours with the regular classroom. So it's usually being reduced like half. If you're doing some face-to-face lecture in a typical classroom for 1 hour, in a virtual classroom, it will have to be reduced because you have to consider the preparation and all other necessary things. Even after the virtual class, you need to do some assessment. So it will take some time. It will eat out actually your time. And there's also an increased personal contact through the use of SMS or phone calls for communication. That's person to person. So if you have questions where you can directly ask to your students, now with the use of the virtual classroom, they are being forced to sometimes call their students or text them if they have to ask some questions. And shifting to online consultation and meetings would be also very, very difficult. Knowing that in the Philippines or in Mindanao or in the Bangsamoro region, some of the locations there or places don't have a stable internet connection. So it's really a challenge for most of the teachers and educators. And I think another important thing that I have to mention is that, since I have mentioned a while ago, it's not just our job to impart knowledge to the students, but also it is our job to facilitate learning, and part of it is motivating students and establishing a more supportive environment, even in physical distance. How are we going to implement that? So that's considered really a challenge for most teachers and educators. How are we going to establish a more supportive environment for learning in a virtual classroom? I think as a teacher myself, it's easier for us to establish a very good relationship with students and motivate them and create a more supportive environment for learning if for a face-to-face traditional classroom setting. But now it's different because we have the remote learning and the virtual classroom. And then part of the job for most teachers and educators is that they have to spend more time working hours or working more hours, mostly during follow-ups to students and reworking lesson plan and connecting them to a phone or email and video conferences. They thought it would be very easy for most of the teachers and educators to, use the virtual this particular thing they call the shift to online learning, but it means actually more workload for most teachers and educators, and working long hours as compared to face-to-face traditional classroom setting. There's also a problem with access to on-campus resources, like for example, library. Most of the teachers, they go to the library if they want to borrow books or do more research about a certain topic. But because they are prohibited to go to the university, they have to access it online. And some of them, they have really to relearn or learn how to do it online. Of course, most universities right now, they have online library, but most of the teachers that I have interviewed, they are more comfortable really with the online campus or going to the library physically. And then part of the job as an educator and as a professor in a university is for you to come up with a scholarly output. And definitely with the COVID-19 pandemic, it has affected their scholarly output. Some have uh, some professors or teachers are reconsidering if they're going to go to continue with this particular research, or they just have to temporarily put it on the side and they until this pandemic would be over. And then, aside from that, we have to remember that these teachers and educators are also heads of family. I mean, they have most of them, they have children, and they have a partner to take good care also. So there should be a work-life balance, since the transition would mean more time and relearning the technology, and how do they balance the family and the work. So that's considered also a challenge for most educators and teachers. Because of these challenges and difficulties and adjustments, it creates a feeling of social isolation. You don't see your colleagues every day. You don't see physically all of your students, and there's some sort of a disrupted social relationship. All right, and it creates a feeling of anxiety. There could be mood disturbances. There could also be a communication problem, and it would affect also the quality of output. You don't really know if this virtual classroom is a very good idea, because we're still trying it as of the moment, if this is enough already to deliver quality education. And safety worries, of course. How confident are we that we are safe even if we're using the virtual classroom? And it creates also some sort of a confusion, and some students and teachers, they become more stressful because of this new setup or situation. And there's also the feeling of discomfort in general. And this transition at some point will lead to mental health issues and disrupt general well-being, and that's for sure. Some, they can cope up very well, but some, they have to strive a little bit harder than the usual as compared to other people. That's why I think this topic is really very, very important, so that it can help educators, parents, as well as students how to cope up with this new kind of situation we are facing right now, especially in the higher educational system. And as a question, educators and students, we are faced with this question. Rigor, is it rigor or flexibility in this pandemic? We are in the middle of pandemic COVID-19, and at the same time, we want to continue our role as educator, and as a student, we really want to learn and then finish the degree as much as possible. How are we going to balance the rigor and flexibility? When you say rigor, it is how we deliver and how we it refers to the quality that we're able to impart and train students, even in this what we call virtual classroom. And how about flexibility, the transition from face-to-face traditional classroom setting to virtual classroom to remote learning? How do we cope with it? So I think there should be a balance between the quality and the rigor and then the flexibility so that we can transition smoothly and without compromising our mental health and maintain that balance in the midst of the pandemic. So I guess these would be my resources. That would be all for my topic. And some of the other related topics will be discussed by Dr. Limbadan and Dr. Guarino. And we'll be entertaining some questions later on. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Dr. Erickson. We'll entertain the questions later after our third speaker has delivered her talk. For now, let's move on to our second speaker. Um, she is a Davao-based practicing clinical psychologist who obtained her PhD degree from the Ateneo de Davao University. For about 2 decades, she has been a therapist attending to various clients. She's also a human resource consultant who gives trainings, growth sessions, consultancies, among others. She also spends time with the Archdiocese of Davao as a resident consulting psychologist. For 2 terms now, she has served as member of the board of Psychological Association of the Philippines as Internal Relations Officer, and she is currently the chair of the Clinical Psychology Division in the country. She is an associate professor of the Department of Psychology in the Ateneo de Davao University, where she is currently serving as the assistant dean for social sciences. Her research interests are in the field of anger, aggression, adolescent psychology, family system studies, generotology, psychology of retirement, and industrial organizational psych. She is also a United Board Fellow who has completed a leadership fellowship program from the Harvard Institute of Higher Education, Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in July to August 2018. Part of this academic fellowship was spent in Seoul Women's University at the close of 2018, and very recently, she just completed an executive development course for higher education leaders in Singapore Management University. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Nelly Limbadan. Good afternoon, Doc.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Okay, so Jean, thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Eric, for laying the foundation of this webinar. Right? So let us talk about the red flags now. Okay. Uh, Jean, Jean, can you show
Yes,
the
Doc.
presentation? That's not the one. That's not the one.
Oh, all right. For a while lang po.
Yes, yes, yes.
We will be pausing for 2 minutes, around 2 minutes, to address some technical difficulties. Please stay tuned. Apologies for that. We have already taken care of the restart of the computer that we're using here. We'll now proceed with the talk of Director Nelly, Dr. Nelly.
Okay, so shall we have now the red flags? When do we say that our students are showing or manifesting some mental health issues? Okay, so there you go. Pulang-pula siya, no? Because it's really telling us something that, oops, we have to stop. All right, next, please. Okay, I want us to understand that when we talk about mental health, for most people, for most teachers, for most administrators, mental health, their default is that it's about the maladjustment, it's about depressive symptoms, it's about the psychopathology of behaviors. But let us just go back that mental health, as defined by World Health Organization, if you show it now, everybody's using this definition, and I need us to stick to this when we face our students. Mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. If you try to look at it, it's holistic. We cannot just be focusing on something that is bordering into mentally unwell siya. The other one is actually healthy. So try to look at it. If you I'm using a slide by an Australian university. No? So if you look at the mentally unwell side, these are some of the maladjustment issues. These are some of the things that people would normally associate with a mental health issue. Pero I want us, and I invite everybody na meron din on the other side, no, mentally healthy individuals. And what are these characteristics? If you look at it, these are being resilient, you can cope, you are also being resourceful, you have very good positive relationships. I also want to talk about usual mood fluctuations. We're not always happy, but we're not also always mad, right? So usual mood fluctuations, normal yan siya. So we need to understand nga, okay, I'm still okay, I'm feeling all these things, and I'm mentally okay. And then we have the usual sleep pattern, sometimes too much intake of caffeine or other activities prior to sleeping. So it will affect, but those are some of the things that we can still regulate and control. And then there's you're energized, and then you're able to manage challenges, and you can socially engage. Okay, so have that in the background as we talk about who are these students who might be raising, who might be manifesting signs during the conduct of virtual classes. So next slide, Jean, please. Okay. Now, I'm using, kasi we have the red flag. So that's the green flag there. In educational curriculum development, red flag actually refers to um, interests of students that are being focused when you develop something for them. So, doon tayo sa green flag. When is green flag hoisted? Or the other consideration is, what are some of the characteristics of well-adjusted students? You can see there that a healthy and well-adjusted person, not just student, no, but adults for that matter, should possess or display some observable or behavioral patterns. And what are these? Maturity in thinking, emotional balance, warm and understanding towards others. So your ability to socialize well, and then you have free from tension due to routine events and independent in decision making. So all these characteristics, and then you have a college student there, you have a higher education, higher ed learner. Take a look at that and say, okay, well adjusted ito. For example, maturity in thinking. If the teacher advises the student and gives feedback that, you need to work on your project, you have to do it again. I don't think it it satisfies what we talked about in terms of requirement. So maturity, so ma-accept niya, and emotional balance. So all these things are characteristics if a person or a student for that matter, or tayo, no, administrators or teachers, are well adjusted. Now, what about the signs for possible presence of mental illness, emotional distress in online students? I am using the study published by a journal written by Bonnie Barr of Creighton University, Sectarian University in Nebraska. We need to understand that our counterparts, universities, higher education institutions, on the other side of the world, they have started full online classes. Tayo ngayon pa lang. So I'm saying that this literature may be coming from them, but from what we had in the past months, since we already have our online classes, these are also true in our situation. So tatlo lang po, no, for everyone who's listening now, remember all these things kasi ito na yung pinaka-red flag natin. One would be atypical behaviors, unusual behaviors, and academic problems as mentioned by Sharkin in 2006. I also would like to tell you that all of these things resemble or follow a pattern. It does not mean that nakita nyo lang one time, that's it already. So people in the helping profession, we look at patterns. What else? What other characteristics have been manifested? What other behaviors have been manifested that led us, no, or that led the researchers to say, na ito pala. So let's discuss a typical behavior. Okay, so a typical would be a change from the usual. So take a look at this. So teachers, administrators, or students, no, or parents are watching this broadcast right now. Take a look at the first behavior: becoming irritable, short-tempered, obsessive. Doc, paano to? Hindi natin sila nakikita. So again, the idea here is that we need to be observant already. That's why at this point, let me tell you that when we conduct, let's say, kung synchronous siya, like everybody's there, there's a video conferencing, teachers, di ba, we are supposed to look at the camera and of your laptop or whatever gadget you're holding, and not your face screen, because that would tell me na nakafocus ako sa inyo while talking. So yung number one na behavior, you can ano if makita natin ang mga bata na parang sad ba kaya, or if there are dissatisfaction ganyan sa table or what, no, all these things, or parating mawala, no, magko-close ng camera. So that can be a behavior also. Second, abruptly begins turning in late assignments. Okay, I'd like us to focus on abrupt. Ibig sabihin, meron na tayong awareness, alam natin ang characteristic, alam natin ang behavior ng student na yan. By saying and by observing that abruptly, the student is turning in late assignments, ibig sabihin, you are also monitoring, much like in the conventional face-to-face classroom. Diba, we have the class record and all that. So number two would be, may nagbago. No? Okay, the third one, becoming disrespectful in discussion posts. Iba na ang sinasabi, marami ng swearing siguro, marami ng mga words that we don't allow, no, in the classroom or even sa family, ganon. So it is a sign na parang may nagbago. Okay? The fourth one, stops responding to email. At this point, I'd like to share that some would say, friends kami sa Facebook, I sent something sa messenger, hindi naman nag-reply. I am not sure about the policies of other HEIs, but Facebook kasi is personal, right? So kung email, that is our official channel in contacting the student. So if you have been emailing the class, no, nagpadala ka ng material, or they have access to LMS or the whatever learning management system you're using, and suddenly you don't hear anything from the student, so that raises a red flag. Hala, saan siya? Then fifth would be content of work becomes negative, dark, odd in tone. Marami ng mga perhaps words, may mga suicidal ideation na, may iba na ang sinasabi niya, or kung it involves na sa engineering and architecture, maybe if it involves colors masyado ng dark, no? So that can be our red flag as well sa atypical behavior. Let's go to the second category, Sir Jean. So from atypical, this is now unusual behaviors. Okay, as I've said, our official channel of communication should be email. One, because it can be traced, it can be documented, right? So ito, number one, emails are accusatory, manipulative, sexually inappropriate, or threatening na. So pag may ganito na, kung alam ko lang saan ka nakatira, I'll do this, ma'am, sir, bakit mo ko binagsak, and all those, or, well, adolescents in terms of sexual inappropriateness, and may mga threats na dyan. So it's not usual. The second one, discussion post contents are bizarre, fantastical, paranoid, disruptive, confused, or show disorientation. That's also related to the third one, wherein students clearly, they seem out of touch with reality. Pinaka-example nito, halimbawa, English teachers, no, you're asking for an essay of what's going on, how's your transition, etc. They might tell you or describe post-apocalyptic situations, or they probably tell you a story from 200 years ago, or that your student is a prince or princess, or yung mga ganon. So parang it's not talking about the reality. So people in the helping profession right now would, what is wrong with the person? Bakit ganito? So it raises again a red flag. Okay, so let's go to the third category and last category. Okay, here. Prior to COVID, when we were giving sessions on how to spot students with mental health difficulties, etc., ang number one na sinasabi natin, tingnan mo yung kanyang absences, take a look at the ang kanyang attendance, ang mga submission requirements, etc. Can this be monitored when we will be in virtual classes? Definitely. So Sharkin in 2006 tells us the following. Number one, similar to the first one earlier, late assignments from beginning, of course. In virtual classes, diba, not many but much, we are advised na hindi na ito from the cover of the book, no, until the end. Hindi siya cover to cover. We're supposed to choose essential topics, but from the beginning of the course, parang alam mo na something is wrong, does not turn in, or kung meron man, very mediocre. So it tells us something already na bakit, no? So kung internet man ang problema, please understand that, earlier, CHED had a consultation on FL or flexible learning. We are also encouraged that pwede namang i-deliver yung instruction natin even if it's not internet-based. So there are many ways. But again, whether that or the other, pero in terms of submission, no, of assignments, that is another red flag. Second, failing quality of work from beginning, of course. So we talk about how often, or nagsasubmit ba or wala. And then second one would be yung quality, iba talaga. No, you have your rubrics, you have your criteria, you know what to use when you evaluate our work. Third, not returning emails or phone calls. I'm not sure about phone calls, if you will do that, but emails. So not returning, you have not heard anything from the person, okay? So and you've given already consideration, pero wala pa rin, okay? Which is related to number 4, or not turning in work at all, not that's at all. Okay. The fifth one, not redoing work when given an opportunity. Ito yung sinasabi ko every time I give sessions on what we can do as employers, as teachers, as administrators. I would always promote the 3 C's. Ito yung pagiging caring, compassionate, and consideration. Pero despite that, ginawa mo ng, deadline is 2 days ago, o sige, you can submit late, wala pa rin. Okay? Why is that? No? So, it raises a question, saan ang estudyante? Okay? And the last one, ongoing display of anxiety about assignments. So, anxiety, this was mentioned already by Dr. Batican earlier, can be shown, can be manifested in various forms. No? The student might report na, ma'am, hindi ko naintindihan yung assignment mo. Ma'am, I don't have, my data is limited. Ma'am, I don't think that's the correct lahat na. No? So, ang worry, nagpa-pile up na siya. Okay? So, yun, meron tayong tatlo. Just to review, you have the atypical behaviors, unusual behaviors, and then academic performance problems. Okay? So, I hope nakuha natin yun. Now, moving to the next slide. But we have to consider the following. When an instructor identifies the need to address a mental health concern with an online student, the conversation will most likely via email or phone. As I have mentioned, are you friends with your student on Facebook? No, or are you on Viber? Are you on WhatsApp? Are you at other platforms? But again, remember that the most official channel of communication is email. Pero again, if the mag-provide siya ng kanyang number, that's fine also. Second consideration, faculty should be clear, matter of fact, and to the point about the behaviors of concern. Later on, Dr. Guarino will tell us about paano ba ito gawin? How do we actually care? The third point, and I am highlighting in yellow because ito yung course expectations. Ibig sabihin, the first day of class will dictate everything. Okay, so course expectations, dapat klaro, ano ba ang deliverables, ano ba ang dapat gawin, ano ba ang expectations, di ba? So make your first day, make that good impression na, okay, first day, ito yon. Okay, and therefore, follow these requirements, satisfy all this, ganyan. Okay, and the last one, non-judgmental acceptance of the student's state of mind is helpful for encouraging conversation about the problem should there be an issue later on. No? And then sabihin natin, Dr. Guarino will expound this one later, pero yung non-judgmental acceptance, probably teachers would say, but I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychologist, refer ko na lang yan. But again, just that presence, no, yung acknowledging that something is, bothering the student, that already can, make the person feel better. Okay, non-judgmental acceptance. And then the next one. Okay. So statements like, it seems as if you're having a rough time, I sense that you really are stressed out, shows concern without confrontation. And there are many ways you can be creative in responding or in saying that. Student response to faculty contact can range from relief to panic to defensiveness and anger. And this is the last thing that we would like our students to be feeling the entire time that you'll have the virtual classes, no? Mahirap yan. If anything in the conversation leads the faculty member to be alarmed or have increased concern about the student, then the academic discipline process can be initiated. The student can be offered campus resources for assistance. No? CHED is requiring us na meron some form, no, a similar assistance or referred for counseling and medical consultation kung kailangan na merong gamot na naibigay natin. But we hope na di tayo pupunta doon. Okay? But for the next question, and the next logical thing would be, knowing all these as administrator, as faculty, as parents, as students, what will I do now? Okay? So let's listen to Doc Aimee as she tells us some of the strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nelly. Yes po. We'll be entertaining your questions for you later after Dr. Aimee has delivered her talk
All right.
again. All right. For our third and last and definitely not the least speaker, uh, she finished her Bachelor of Science in Psychology at Silliman University, Dumaguete City. She obtained both her Master of Science in Guidance and Counseling degree and Doctor of Philosophy in Counseling Psychology, major in Clinical Counseling at De La Salle University in Manila. She started her counseling profession as a guidance counselor in a school setting where clients range from grade school pupils to college students and their parents as well. She soon blossomed in the profession until she supervised counselors in handling counseling cases as the Director of Counseling and Psychological Wellness Center in Brokenshire College, Davao City. As a director in the Office of Counseling and Career Services in De La Salle University from 2015 to 2019, but even with her supervisory position, she never lose sight attending to her clients, individuals, couples, and even families. She further honed her counseling skills by undergoing advanced training in intensive counseling supervision at the Counseling and Care Center in Singapore and in family therapy supervision at the Philadelphia Child and Family Therapy Training Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. She had her training workshops in cognitive behavior therapy for depression and suicide, post traumatic stress disorder, and trauma, CBT for anxiety, and teaching and supervising cognitive behavior therapy in Beck Institute Incorporated in Philadelphia, USA. Her research interests are in counseling and psychological services, family relationships, as well as in child and family counseling. These studies have been published in various journals and have been presented in both local and international conferences. As a professional counselor and family therapist, she is regularly invited to conduct seminar workshops on various topics such as enhancing relationships, family counseling, parenting, social skills enhancement, helping families, grief, counseling and psychological assessment, values in the workplace, violence against women and children, domestic violence, also among others. She used to work as a vice president for academic affairs, clinical director of the Counseling and Psychological Wellness Center, director of student services, guidance counselor, and faculty member at Brokenshire College, Davao City. She was also a guest lecturer and graduate school professor in other schools and universities in Davao City. At present, she is a full-time faculty at the Counseling and Educational Psychology Department at De La Salle University, Manila, and was assigned at the Office of Counseling and Career Services as its director from 2015 to May 2019. She practices as a counseling psychologist and director for clinical services and supervision at MH Pro Counseling and Wellbeing Center. She is a registered guidance counselor and a registered psychologist in the Philippines. She is a lifetime member of the Philippine Association of Counselor Education, Research and Supervision, or PACERS, and, and has served as a board member and an officer from 2013 until at present, where she is the chairperson. As a member of the Psychological Association of the Philippines, or PAP, she is a certified counseling psychologist, clinical psychologist, and assessment psychologist. She is also a member of the Philippine Guidance and Counseling Association, or PGCA, and the Asia Pacific Educational Counselors Association, or APCA. She is a loving wife and a mother to two emerging adult daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Aimee Guarino. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. To complete the webinar package prepared for you this afternoon, I will focus my talk on, can you now show my slide, Jean? The next slide. I will focus my talk this afternoon on the teachers as first mental health responders in the virtual classrooms. Okay, next. To put teeth into my presentation this afternoon. I used the Philippine mental health law to back me up and lifted some relevant sections from the law to really give me strong backup so that like schools, colleges, and universities will be cognizant and will take action in the call of the law to develop national mental health policies and programs, to establish national mental health care system, to protect rights of persons with mental health needs, to strengthen information system and research, and to promote mental health in school, workplace, and community. I also included section 23, the integration of mental health into the educational system and in the workplace. An age-appropriate content pertaining to mental health shall be integrated into the curriculum at all educational levels. And we are mandated by the law to develop programs for students, educators, and other employees designed to raise awareness on mental health issues, identify and provide support for individuals at risk, and to facilitate access of individuals with mental health conditions to treatment and psychological support. Okay, so Dr. Nelly has discussed with us the 3 categories of the warning signs when students are manifesting mental health illness or distress. And I just would like to add that there are students who will internalize their emotional problems, and there are also some students who will externalize their emotional problems. If a student has internalized her problems, she may become withdrawn or depressed, and the teacher may not be aware of the student's distress. If the student externalizes their emotional problems, this student puts emotion on display and may become disruptive, even antagonistic in class. And it's easy to spot that there is a problem. So warning signs are vivid. But for the other students who express their emotions internally, this may be challenging. And we will see how we will respond to these types of students. Okay, this has been discussed with you. So moving forward, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as professional teachers, it is imperative among us to educate our students in safe, caring, accepting, inclusive, and equitable environments. It is part of our role to protect and honor the students' mental wellness, dignity, culture, language, and heritage. And to put this into action, I'll share with you some practical tips. So for example, at the beginning of our classes, during class orientation, you can create an I care form. I actually invented this name, I care. No, back to the previous slide, Jean. Yeah, back to the previous slide, please. That one. Okay, so this I care form, you may do that. You may create a Google form for this. The information needed for this form are the name, email address, and primary phone number of your students, and an alternate contact number and email ad in case of emergencies. So you will ask them also to put name and relationship with the contact person for emergency purposes. And then at the bottom of this form, include confidentiality clause and duty to report statements. So you ask also your students to put an e-signature or press a click, make a click button to signify agreement. Then you coordinate with the school's counseling center for teleservices processes and include this in your classroom orientation. Discuss with your students what that they can email you for concerns needing reasonable academic accommodations. This is perhaps how to address the Hello, Jean. What's happening? By telling your students to email you for their concerns, this can address the needs of those students who are internalizing their emotional problems. Hello, Jean. What happened? The presentation is out.
Naghang.
Okay. Okay, so these are the sources of stress also for virtual classrooms. Yeah. So let's wait. So if I'll go ahead talking, we don't have the presentation, Jean. Is that what you're asking? Okay, I'll use my PowerPoint presentation. I'll see if I can do it. Hi, Jean. Can you give me instruction? Okay. So because we have technical problem, and this is indeed the source of anxiety, not only among students, but also among teachers. So I will continue with my presentation.
Hi,
Ah,
Doc.
Why? What
Well,
happened?
back from from a very difficult technical issue here. We got disconnected. I'll just flash again your slide so that you can continue with your talk.
Ah, so it's there na.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
Apologies again. Yes,
It's okay, it's
for a while.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So to continue with my discussion and this practical tip based on experience, so you have to coordinate with the school's counseling center for teleservices processes and include this in your class orientation. Or you can perhaps like ask a video recording from your counseling center so that you will just like upload it during your class orientation. And then Discuss with your students that they can email you for concerns needing reasonable academic accommodations. Actually, reasonable academic accommodation should be a school-wide effort. So from admission to graduation, students needing accommodation should be responded to. Okay, next slide, Jean. Okay, so the Ontario College of Teachers published a professional advisory in supporting students' mental health. And I put an acronym CLIBA for us to recall what are these areas that we need to be mindful of when we support our students' mental health in the virtual classroom. So CLIBA, C means create a supportive learning environment. L, learn to recognize behavior of concern. I, intervene appropriately. B, be sensitive. And A, act professionally. Next. Okay, so when you create supportive learning environment, you have to make effort in integrating positive classroom environment in each course syllabus that you design. Then balance course content and student care and safety in your course preparation and teaching. Promote good mental health by focusing on strengths rather than fixing on students' flaws. And you also have to check the following areas of concern or areas of assessment. So check and respond to this. Do the culture and structures within your learning environments promote students' mental health? Like, what is the school's culture in terms of mental health? Are the administrators supportive of a comprehensive mental health program? Are they now starting to make mental health policies? Okay, so how about your structures? Like, do all students have the necessary gadgets to learn in a virtual classroom? Or do they have connectivity problems? So what is that? How is this? And then are there opportunities for professional development on mental health? See, for example, as a teacher, you have difficulty handling students with mental health distress. So for you to be able to be equipped to develop skills on responding to their needs, are there opportunities for you to be trained? Is there a school support system with information and strategies to support identified students, or a school-based support plan that involves parents, family, doctors, social workers, psychologists, or others? Or can students talk about mental illness openly in terms that do not promote stigma? If your answers to these questions are not very clear, then I think you have to talk to your supervisor. L, learn to recognize the characteristics of mental illness in students. This has been discussed by Dr. Nelly earlier. Now, as teachers, you have to take action. Now, if there is one student who's manifesting mental illness, then perhaps you can check, are there chronic health problems that's presented by this particular student? Or is there a family history of illness or disorder or family conflict or intergenerational trauma? Has a family doctor been consulted? Or when is it appropriate time to inform your school's health and wellness team and school administrators about your concern? So is this for referral? Okay. Do you know the factors associated with higher risk of mental health difficulties? So like, for example, if this particular student is in distress and is in a relationship problem and has financial problem, so all of this are really mixed together, then that's a high risk for mental health problem or distress. Then can you determine what constitutes a crisis? So you have to know all of this. If you are already confident to address all of this, then it's easy for you to more or less support your students' mental health in a virtual classroom. Next. Next slide, Jean. Okay. Intervene appropriately. I from CLIBA. So approach students with potential mental health concerns with sensitivity, empathy, and understanding. Then use positive, accepting language and offer positive options. Acknowledge anger, but don't accept abusive, offensive language. And don't argue. Ask if there's someone they usually get support from who you can call on their behalf. If students are at risk of harm, act immediately according to your employer's policies and protocols. Always maintain professional boundaries when providing support. Then inform, involve, and collaborate with significant mental health teams as indicated in your school policy. If there's no school policy, then ask the help from your counseling center. Next, be sensitive. Recognize and appreciate that there may be community, religious, and cultural differences that affect student and parent choices regarding mental health illnesses and treatment. Validate their feelings and hear their concerns. Speak simply and clearly. If necessary, repeat things. Avoid language that creates stigma. Allow students time to process information and to respond. Let them know that you're listening. Most importantly, demonstrate patience, calm, and a willingness to help. The last one from CLIBA is act professionally. Observe, listen, inform, and involve others, but do not counsel. As teachers, do not counsel. It is not your job to diagnose and do treatment. It is the job of our registered practitioners. Do not disclose confidential information. Beware of overcare or overstepping boundaries. For example, be aware that some students can misconstrue help as intimacy. Consult your supervisor or your counselor frequently. Professionals also practice self-care. So as teachers, we also need to care for ourselves. Recognize your stressors and know the resources that are available to you. Next slide. So that's CLIBA from Ontario College of Teaching. I chose this publication because Ontario, Canada is strictly follow inclusive education. Now, Lakbay Eye Care. This is another approach in supporting your students in virtual classrooms. This is local. This is like an approach used by the university where I am connected. So when I was still their director, our mental health in charge created mental health CPR. CPR means connect people to resources. It's just like mental health first aid. So the acronym of this approach is LaSalle Eye Care. But with the permission of the author, I replaced LaSalle with Lakbay. So Lakbay is walk with our students. Lakbay because I care. L means listen without judgment. I instill hope. C, check for safety. A, accept or acknowledge. R, refer to professionals who can help. And E, evaluate yourself. Okay, so listen without judgment. Set aside your biases. Suspend your judgments. Next. Yeah, just like Dr. Xavier's saying, be quick to care and slow to judge. So develop this attitude in your mind as teachers. Instill hope. Troubled youth need to know their lives can improve. When students are in their lowest moment and they feel that the and they feel that their world is very dark, they care to know if their lives can improve. So when teachers provide a refuge by attending and responding to the needs of the students, they inspire hope. Teachers who can focus on developing student strengths are more successful than those who focus on fixing flaws. By not giving up on youth, proactive teachers help sustain the belief in brighter future. That's instilling hope. So statements like this will help instill hope among our students. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but there is hope that things can get better. Encourage hope. Remind them that anxiety and depression are treatable, and with the right support, most people recover. Telling them that I'm here for you. Anxiety and depression can make people feel very isolated and alone. Hearing someone say explicitly that they'll be there and will stick by you during recovery can really help. Next. Okay. C for lakbay eye care. Check for safety. As teachers, you can do this brief suicide risk assessment through your email or group or a chat, and ask them, have you had thoughts about harming or killing yourself? Have you felt like acting on them? Have you considered actually ending your life? Have you made any plans about how you would do this? How likely is it that you might act on these plans? If the responses of your student is yes, then it's time for you to call your counselors or the counselor attending to your student, or you call the alternate number that the student gave you for help. Okay, then check for safety. Never leave a suicidal person on their own. Try to remove the means of suicide available to the person if it is safe to do so, like medicine, mag-overdose, or sharp objects. Then call for help. It is best to work collaboratively with the person and others to ensure their safety, rather than acting alone to prevent suicide at any cost. A, acknowledge. I can see this is really hard time for you. So simple statements like this will help them that you are validating their emotion, that you acknowledge that their emotion is real. Okay? And the least helpful statements are those that shut down the conversation. Like, I know how you feel. Just snap out of it. You're attention seeking. Think more positively. You'll be right. Just get over it. So these statements are not helpful. This is not acknowledging their real emotion. Then, R, refer to an expert. Have you ever thought of visiting your counselor or seeing a doctor? You can ask your student. Okay, next. And then evaluate yourself as teachers. Check and look after your own mental health. If talking to the distressed person is affecting your own functioning, it is best to consult with an expert. Okay? So there are other words to say which are helpful in supporting your students with mental health problem. So let's look at this. So like telling them, what can I do to help? Just tell me how. Or asking them, I'm not sure what to do, but I'm sure we can figure it out together. Next. So like assuring them also of confidentiality, telling them that this conversation is between you and me is helpful. Telling them, I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. Can we start again? So it's okay to commit mistakes. Next slide. Okay, so I have noticed you seem to be doing better lately. Is that how it feels for you? So this is so nice to respond. Do you feel like doing something together to help take your mind off things? In other words, okay. So, but if the person is highly in distress and those helpful, those words is not helping them anymore, then you have to call a hotline or call your school clinic if the person is really in crisis. Because once the person is emotionally distressed and is in crisis, like really crying out loud, and it's difficult for you to manage, then you can ask the school clinic protocol, because mental health, once it's emergency, is a medical case. Okay, and then when this is also installed, the mental health protocol, then you know what to do. Okay, so now there's like an example of a mental health resource for online students, which is considered a best practice as indicated in the Bonnie Bars article. So this comprehensive student services is helpful to support our students. Pre-enrollment services, mental health education, crisis services, and these are all online, self-help services, referral to disability services, and counseling services. Okay, are these all installed in your universities or schools? Perhaps like at this moment, not yet. But our dear administrators, let's start to think about this, to be cognizant about this. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we have in the Philippines perhaps is counseling center. So all schools, colleges, and universities have counseling centers. And at this time, our counseling centers should be telepsychology ready so that counselors can competently deliver teleservices following the proper guidelines of telecounseling. Then, our counseling center is supposed to launch a school-wide teleservices system and create clear steps and processes of teleservices. This is very helpful. Okay, so now, during my introduction earlier, I was wishing that our administrators in different institutions will echo the same objectives of our mental health law. Like they will put in place what is mandated to us in to develop instance related to health and wellness to every online students. So what we do, create a campus atmosphere encourages students. So we should encourage seeking behavior and create policies that address disruptive student behavior and include steps for identification and treatment of underlying emotional problems. Create faculty, and student services, and the goal for addressing student behavior and distress. Then create policies for campus crisis, disasters that include prevention, intervention, and postvention services for students. So there should also be a crisis management team in the school. Then in counseling and health designing of policies and protocols addressing mental health issues. Next. Okay, so to end my presentation, I would like to leave these 4 areas of reflection to our ears. Reflect, detect, intervene, intervene, support, and report, coming from a reflective framework to support students' mental health. Okay, reflect. Ask yourself, what do I know about mental health and mental illness? What are my personal thoughts and biases? Do I use language that is respectful and non-stigmatizing? Am I part of a school-wide approach to promote mental health? What is my support network? Do I know the school's mental health lead or counselor, and how do I contact them? Do I know my school's mental health policy? Next. Detect. Ask yourself, am I aware of the early signs of possible mental health concerns? You are, because it was discussed earlier. Is there an identifiable continuum of care for students? Does the student have or need an individual educational plan or safety plan? Are students self-injuring, at risk of suicide, or at risk of harming others? Next, reflection. Intervene and support. Ask yourself, have I created an environment in which students feel safe, valued, engaged, and purposeful? What does the student need to succeed? Do I look for opportunities to promote mental health within the curriculum? In providing support, am I mindful of the need to maintain professional boundaries? How do I support students who feel ashamed and stigmatized? Do I know what to do and who to contact if the student discloses suicidal thoughts? Last, report. Just ask yourself, have I informed my students about school's confidentiality policy and my duty to report? Do I know how to report and what to report? Do I know who to report to in an emergency? Do I collaborate with parents, mental health professionals, and other community members as needed? Do I keep my communication with parents, students professionally, culturally appropriate, and open? So in conclusion, my dear educators, your positive relationship with your students actively promote their mental health. Your knowledge is valuable, but not as powerful as when it's combined with the knowledge of other professional colleagues. Your commitment about learning and addressing mental health issues is the best way to support your students. Apply your professional judgment. If you are unsure whether an action is appropriate and you have a concern, then report to your supervisor. Thank you for listening, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Aimee.
Yeah, we're done.
We'll now add to the broadcast Dr. Nelly and Dr. Ericson so that we can
Okay.
proceed immediately to the question and answer portion. For our audience, you may continue to log your comments or questions down in the comment section below so that we can uh, ask our guest speakers for this afternoon. Let's go to the first question. This is posted on YouTube by Ezra and Uy. Uh, this is in particular in the school setting. In what other ways can we support our students other than through tele or web counseling? What techniques or strategies can you recommend? Anyone from our resource speakers could answer the question.
Counseling.
Yes. What other?
Ezra, if you're talking about counseling, so it will be delivered by a registered registered psychologist in, excuse me, from the school. So they also have their own processes. But to answer effective, as teachers, referral is an effective way. You have to refer because as a teacher, you should not be the counselor of your student. There should be no dual relationship or dual role. Teacher will teach, counselors will counsel. And there are a lot of evidence-based techniques in handling mental health issues. If you're really interested on what, well, what's like the evidence-based approach in helping students and anxiety, it's behavior therapy.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Aimee. Next, we
Yeah.
have a question from Iris Advincolag. It's posted on YouTube. Isn't it also important to consider the mental health of other family members of the student, especially their parents?
Jean,
Yes.
sorry,
Oh,
Rika.
yes,
Before we answer the question of Iris
Iris.
Advincula, can I just add to the uh, first
Sure.
question?
Yes, yes, Doc.
Because Ezra was asking, aside from counseling, how else, right? Can we help? How else can we
Yes,
assist our students? I'd like to emphasize that counseling is just one of the student services center, correct? So
Yeah,
if it does not warrant counseling, what are the programs of the other student services na office? So ano
yeah,
ito? Halimbawa, you have the sports siguro, no? Yan sila, kasali yan. You have the clinic, you have the campus ministry and all a library, of course, it's part of that. Um, Very important that whatever your program or service is, dapat nakakonect ka sa LMS. Okay? So you need to know ano ba ang isang learning management system na meron ang aking university so that I can easily connect and track the students. Baka hindi kasi counseling ang kailangan. So if you have that good database, and that means email, and that means number, then you can reach out. Kasi di ba, most of the things, one counselor would say, she's watching now, si TC is watching now, na, Ma'am Nel, anxiety naman yung kanyang sinishare sa akin. And then I said, do not undermine that issue. Ang importante is na feel ng student na, may tao, may kumausap sa akin. So it doesn't have to be that. So kung meron silang access to you, it is very important na alam mo yon how to reach them. So yun, para lang to add also. Thank
right.
you, Jean.
Correct.
Thank you,
Correct.
Dr. Nelly. All right, so we can now proceed to the second question.
Yes, may I say something?
Yes, yes, Doc.
Addressing the question of Miss Iris about parents, the mental health of the parents also. As I
Yes,
have presented a while ago in my topic, parents they are part of the balance. Whether you are an educator or a family member or a student, since we are into this transition of remote learning and virtual classroom, and most of the time you will be doing it in the house or at home. They are basically part of it, and when you're stressed, they get affected. So we should include the support system and the family members in our programs sa mental health, and usually naman sa schools, sa mga centers like counseling centers, they would require also the participation of the parents and other family members in support of the well-being of or the mental health of the student who is enrolled in that institution. So basically, yes, we have to consider the mental yung parents or the family members, not just the student or even yung faculty, and even yung faculty, the teacher themselves. may support system din, may mga programs din tayo na available being offered by the higher institutions in this difficult time. And I'm sure our administrators like Nelly and then Aimee would agree na it's part of the program of the institution to really support the mental health of our faculty and the teachers in colleges and universities.
Yeah, it's in the law. It's in the law.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. For the next question, we have from Glenn Laud. How do we deal with anxiety brought by technical problems? For example, what we have experienced earlier. Anybody from the panelists can answer?
Well, that is really like something that is not supporting the mental health of our students in virtual classroom. Because remember, if we wanted to provide them positive mental health, the structure should also be like attended to, like the gadgets that they're using, or like connectivity. So this is something that we are not yet prepared in the Philippines. So it's really adding up to our anxiety. Then when you already have anxiety disorder, then this is always a trigger. Like every time there's like virtual classroom. But I think naman, yung virtual classroom natin at this time, it is not like there are asynchronous na class based student facing. Like there are some recording so that pwede naman you can still catch up with the class even if your connectivity at that time is low. But yeah, true. It's like a valid concern. GM, it's difficult. Yeah. Siguro the teacher will be flexible in really like asking the students like submission deadlines, and then you teachers, if you really you students also, if you have anxiety problems or disorder, you email your teacher so that there would be like a reasonable accommodation for.
Dr. Nelly or
I,
Dr. Ericson, do you want to add?
Rick, can I go ahead?
yeah, sure.
Um, the question of Glenn really is, we're here now, and as to when it's going to end, as to when are we going to lessen ang technical problems or what, we really don't know that. So I think we have to improvise, right? So from the very beginning, kung magklase ka man, for example, we need to assure, no? That's what I'm trying to say, assurance to our students na, anytime pag mawala itong, let's say kung synchronous, that's what Ma'am Aimee was saying, synchronous ito, mawala yung connection or what, don't worry about it. I'll send you my presentation, may pre-recorded naman ako or what. There's the link, basta the assurance lang na we may have problems later on, but you can still get the material. And I think when we assure people, it makes them believe na no matter how difficult it is, pwede naman pala, kakayanin, kahit na mahirap. So the assurance is very important. No? Nandun ka.
Yeah, in addition to Dr. Nelly, definitely this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, has changed the landscape in our educational system, and I would agree na medyo behind tayo in terms of infrastructure kasi nga nagkakaroon tayo ng mga technical problems and difficulties, and it's really creating some sort of an anxiety to the educators and the students. But at the end, Dr. Nelly said it's all about flexibility. Since it will take some time, the universities right now are doing their part in terms of providing some hardware and even software to the students and the teachers. But in the bigger perspective, yung the government medyo matagal-tagal pa before we can really stabilize the infrastructure, especially yun sa internet connection. So in the meantime, it calls for creativity and flexibility of our educators as well as to our students. Habaan lang ng konti yung patience natin so that we can cope up with this very unique situation where we are in right now. Pag naputol, sabi ni Doc Nelly, we can send it through your email, or it doesn't have to be synchronous. Asynchronous, pwede siya. That anytime you will have a connection, pwede mo ma-access yung mga na-email mo or yung na-post mo sa group chat or whatever form you're using. That's it.
Thank you for that. Our next question is from Kurt Joseph. What are the ideal infographics to send students with mental health issues?
Sige. If Kurt is asking ideal infographics, you mean the delivery, anong dapat ilagay doon, anong dapat nakita sa promotional material? Is that what the question? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can add, no? What are the ideal infographics to send students with mental health issues? Dapat the messaging is simple. Dapat andun yung what you're feeling, like these things, because it is an abnormal situation, your reaction is normal, but there is help. So, basta the messaging is clear, klaro doon, ito yung nararamdaman ko ngayon, kanino ako pupunta, ano pwede kong gawin, right? Can you add to that? The infographics, very specific?
Yeah, perhaps like that. For me, it would be good to make infographics that's more positive. Perhaps it not be so helpful if we are too problem focused or focused on psychopathology. I would like to focus on how we can recover, and those infographics, those are helpful. Like there's hope, like instill hope in the infographics that we make.
Dr. Ericson?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that we should be sending a message that there are people who would be there for you to provide support for you. That the system is still in place, and the environment is supportive. Whatever it is that you are facing, difficulties or challenges, or even mental issues or mental illness, that we are here. Na hindi ka nag-iisa, nandito pa rin kami. That alone would really help.
Sir Jean, very important. I miss it out. Please understand that infographics are tools, right? So what is important is that dapat legitimate yung source na inilagay mo doon sa infographic. Yun lang naman. Now and then and I think very important also na culture sensitive siya. Right? So, this project halimbawa is HECBOL, right? Bangsamoro. Baka may ibang term sa different culture yung ganitong pakiramdam. So use that advantage to reach as many students as we can, na including their cultural background as well. So yung sensitivity, basta accurate yung information, legitimate yung source ng information, infographics would come next. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Nelly. Thank you. I have a personal question based on what I hear from the answers that you've given. For example, there's a disconnect with what the student says and his behavior. Let's say in the virtual classroom, he's very happy, jolly, participative, but he sends you an email or messages you that, "Ma'am, sir, I'm sad, I'm having a problem." How do you deal with that?
Aimee, yung externalizing mo kanina, nandun yun. I'll ask Doc Aimee to answer that.
Okay, so now when we go back to the definition of mental health by WHO and Philippine Mental Health, if the student is productive, then perhaps there's no impairment, so there's no problem. And then now, she is like emailing you that I have this problem, you can respond. Like, what is it? And then, if indeed there are signs that you have spotted, aside from being productive in class, then you refer. Remember, referral. Yeah. So do not bombard yourself as teachers of all like the tasks. Kasi you need to take care of yourselves also. So refer ka pag talagang merong problema. Pero ito naman, it's good na the student's still productive. So continue what you're doing. Kasi the student is participating despite of the mental distress that the student is experiencing. So congratulations, teacher. You're doing good.
If I may add also, Doc, that is one of the disadvantages of virtual classroom because the facial expression that they're giving you would not necessarily mean how that's what they really feel inside. In comparison to the face-to-face traditional classroom setting, where you can be more sensitive because you are there physically, but if the camera captures only a certain degree, hindi mo makikita yung mga nonverbal cues na tinatawag natin. So there could be a discrepancy in terms of virtual classroom, in terms of detecting really students who have mental health issues. And it's good if they would email you or reveal to you in private if they are suffering or they're feeling some negative emotions. But some students, buti nga kung ganon na nagsasabi sila. So that would be very mas madali sa iyo to offer help. But what about those students who are, you cannot really detect when you do a virtual classroom. So it's one of the challenges. So we can actually, sabi yung presentation nila Ma'am Nelly tsaka ni Ma'am Aimee kanina, it has to be based on kung may time kayo, you really have to sit down and evaluate, ask yourself if you have the capacity really to assess yung behavior, yung classroom, virtual classroom behavior niya, yung kanyang academic performance, is it the same? Nagkakaroon ba ng yung kanyang, wala bang discrepancy doon na okay siya in terms of attendance pero very naman bumababa yung quality of work niya. So these are the factors that you have to consider for those students na hindi talaga open. So it's a challenge, really. It's a challenge. So probably for the educators and teachers, you have to ask yourself, are you capable of detecting those things? Because for some experts, they are more trained to do that thing. So kung hindi kayo sigurado, really better to consult your school psychologist or counselor. Patulong kayo or refer those students na pinagdududahan ninyo na merong mga mental health issues so that ma-detect natin sila and then we can offer help.
Jean?
Yes, sir.
With all of these things, no, I think it's important for teachers, for administrators, to remember na kung ano yung ginagawa natin dati, na hindi pa tayo nag-online. And then, when we see people, when you ask them, right? Okay, walang online muna. When we ask them, oh, how are you? And, oh, I'm okay. But you know that, the non-verbal, I'm okay daw, pero yung ganito, diba? So, we're dealing with human beings. And of course, they many of them, na yung iba ang ipapakita, disconnect nga ang sabi mo. So, sa online, virtual sessions na natin, walang nagbabawal sa atin as teachers na magtanong ulit. Mag-follow up ka. Kung nakita mo na ganito, You can send email and I noticed earlier that ganito, ang sabi mo sa work mo ganito, but ganyan. So, just, and then behavioral, no? Ano yung nakita mo? So that, yun yung care. Yun yung, as example of what Ma'am Aimee was saying earlier, na ano lang, yung, pero remember, meron pa rin tayong official time. Baka kasi in our efforts to reach out to students, no? We make ourselves available till midnight. Kaya nga yung sabi ko kanina, hindi siguro maganda na friends tayo on Facebook, no? Baka there is another way kasi because nga of that disconnect, you're worried na, oh, ano na, baka ako yung cause, bakit ganun yung estudyante ko. So there are ways and just really follow up, no? It doesn't make you ano naman siguro, hindi naman nahirap siguro.
Thank you. Next question is from Ed Flores. Would it be okay for students to make a project online? Like they'll be conversing to someone else and support each one in times of down moments of individuals. Of course, the tips regarding good words to be used will be considered. Will it not be considered as counseling?
Ako.
Yes, Ma'am
Go ahead.
Aimee.
Okay. So it's with a peer, right? Would it be easy to make project online with converse someone? So if this someone is not a registered professional in the mental health practice, so that's not considered counseling because counseling is regulated. It can only be done by registered counselors and psychologists. So it is like a support, friendly support. Yeah, that's helpful because sometimes we don't want to see and seek professional help. We just wanted to get support from peers. So that's like a peer support. And that's not bad. That's helpful.
Thank you, po. Next question we have posted on YouTube from Jerson Ahit. Since nag-start ang COVID, may mga students kahit nag-online class na, feeling nila bakasyon pa. Hindi pa nag-sink in sa kanila na may klase na. How can we motivate them?
Ma'am Nelly.
Yes,
Perspective matters a lot. Okay. So if that student is well connected with the university website or information channel or kung ano man, by now, kasi June 22, magsa-start na kami. Kayo yata, mga July pa or August. So, we can slowly drum up ba na this is real. I'll be start na yung klase, magsisimula na. So perspective, no? Connection begins now. Hindi on first day of class. So dito na administrators, no? So dito na yung meron na sa learning management system, one click lang of a batch. You can send them a communication. How are you, etc. Please mark these sa inyong calendars. Ito yung mga ganyan-ganyan. So, slowly. Parang tayo din yan. Nakabakasyon tayo ng 2 weeks, for example. So, at some point, hinay-hinay. No? We have to change our perspective and reframe. Nasa bahay man tayo, but mag-aaral uli ako. Ayun. So, this is where guidance offices, centers can be of help, and student affairs. Connect to your students. Yun.
Yeah. Earlier, na-discuss ni Doc Eric, no, that you have to find a place for you when you're attending virtual classes. So it would help so that the moment you're seated in that corner at home, so you know that it's no longer vacation. You now will start attending classes. So try to look for a spot. Do not like attend classes anywhere. That's what we're also doing as teachers. We will find a corner so that, yeah, we can productively work and focus on the task at hand.
Dr. Erickson, would you want to add?
Yeah, just like what Dr. Aimee said a while ago, na yung preparation is very important, and Nelly also mentioned that change of mindset na kahit nasa bahay ako, we're going to continue studying and learning. So that's it, and it helps if you can set your own space na pa for the virtual classroom, because you're gonna do it in the house or the comfort of your home, but it doesn't necessarily mean anywhere in the house or the home. So there should be a spot where you can sit, and then there's a stable internet connection. You can put your computer and all other materials related to your schooling or studying. So para to prepare the mind that this is really still studying. This is not a joke, this is not a play, but also still studying in a different in a different setting. This time it's in virtual classroom.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yun
add,
po.
Gerson, no? Gerson,
Yes,
you
po.
also like have to do grooming when you're attending virtual classes. Yeah, but you can feel it. Like it will sink in. Yeah. So you can, for girls, you can put on some lipstick. Kasi at home, wala nang lipstick. So para, class. Yeah. Grooming. Take a bath
Okay.
and then attend classes.
Alright.
Kasi nakakapagod if you're in your sleepwear and then you're attending virtual classes. So you'll not be motivated.
Okay.
Yeah. Sir Jean, I'd like to call it
Yes, po.
physical transition. Physical transition,
Yeah.
work from home and study at home is very important. Yourself and the table, physical, chair, so on.
Thank
Okay.
you po. We have a question here, medyo related sa question ko kanina, but she has a specific example. Is there a way to tell students are faking their mental problems? I know of some students taking mental disorders just to get away with whatever it is that they're liable for, let's say assignments or quizzes, for example.
Okay. This one, can I answer that muna ha? Chinky,
Sige po.
yeah, she's in Korea right now. Generally, and mag-add na lang si Ma'am Aimee later and Eric, generally, for a behavior chinks to be considered psychopathological or abnormal, balik natin and let us remember the 4-letter Ds. No? So halimbawa, yung first D is dysfunction. Okay? Pangalawa is distress. Pangatlo is danger. Anong pang-apat? Tulungan niyo ako. Yung pang-apat na deviance. Yun. So, kung napansin mo sa student na nandun yung 4 na letter Ds, that's your own way ba of saying na may mental health issue talaga ito. Halimbawa, dysfunction, hindi na makaperform, hindi na makasubmit ng assignment. Distress to self and others. Okay? So kung andun yun, again, red flag na. Yung isa, deviance, parang hindi naman ganito, no? On the normative aspect. And then the other one, posing danger. So kung lahat ng 4-letter Ds na yun, Shinks, andoon, most likely, no, that's not fake. Okay, so yun yung general, yun yung theoretical. I'd like to hear from my co-speakers.
Ma'am Aimee.
Okay. So, Shero, like, are you a teacher or a student? But whatever, you
She's a teacher.
she's a teacher. Okay. Actually,
Yes.
this is really a concern among teachers. Like, students are telling them that they are depressed. So that's why they cannot submit their projects on time. So they're asking for like an extension of deadline. So now, what I tell the professors when they like asked me that when I was the director of OCCS. I tell them, for you to know that it's really true, you can ask them to give you a doctor's certificate, like a diagnosis. So if there is and they can provide, then it's not fake. But if they cannot provide, then you may, and then they will really say that I really have a disorder. Again, refer. Yeah. So that you will not be in a burden of these issues as a teacher. But you continue to provide help. Yeah. But for you to really give reasonable accommodation, then and then you're doubting, get a certain.
Yeah, I totally agree, Doc Amy. But if you're a teacher, Cheryl, and then you're familiar already with the student, I think yung 4Ds na ginasuggest or nabanggit kanina ni Doc Nelly would be very very helpful to really determine if the student is faking it just to get away with the responsibilities, the assignments, and all of those projects, or is it really a legitimate reason, just like what Mom Amy said a while ago, get a doctor's certificate and then refer to a specialist so that the students will immediately get help, proper help for the mental health issues.
Can I just add na similar again to face-to-face teaching, this happens, right? So kung ano yung paraan mo before, bago tayo nag-shift to online, then follow, of course. And kung meron mga nakaset na policy sa school ninyo, follow that pa rin. No? Kasi, well, our students, people can be creative these days just to get away with things, diba?
Yep.
But that's a reality. Okay.
Thank you for that. There's a follow-up to the question of Miss Shero. Not a question, it's a comment from Gwyn Everest. Students can provide a doctor's certificate because they don't have money for diagnosis. Would you want to comment on this?
You go to your counseling center. Counselors can diagnose. Yeah.
There you go. It's part of the institution's yung program. So they don't necessarily have to pay for it, Ma'am Amy.
Yeah.
Ganun ba sa school ninyo?
Kahit hindi sa school where I am connected, like if you are a registered counselor, it's part of our task to do like initial diagnosis. We can diagnose. Yeah. So you will know as a counselor. But teachers really have difficulty because they're not trained to do that. So refer mo na lang sa counseling center. Kasi kung totoo talaga tong problema na to. Siguro mag-training din yung teachers for the 4Ds.
All right.
Dr. Nelly, would you want to add? Or?
I agree there. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for answering the questions of our audience on Facebook and YouTube. In the interest of time, we'll have to cut the questions, the Q&A portion rather. But if the audience would have more questions, they can add that in the feedback form, which we will be sending out to them after the webinar. And we'll just forward you the questions maybe and come up with an infographics afterwards. Our team will have an infographics on that. All right. To end the webinar, may I ask a few parting words from each of our resource speakers? Dr. Amy, would you want to begin?
Well, my last slides, I would like to leave that to everyone. Reflect, detect, support, and intervene, and report. Like, do this as teachers. And do not forget to exercise self-care because you need to be mentally healthy in order to support your students with mental health concerns.
Thank you. Dr.
Yes.
Nelly? Yes.
Yeah. I say take it easy. Too much words already. We've been bombarded with so many things, but take it easy. All these things, we may not have an assurance as to when that vaccine will have. No, yun lang naman talaga. But in the meantime, we do things that we can control, no? And it's really mindset, no? Mahirap pero kakayanin. And as I would say, I would recommend what Dr. Gina Lamson would tell us, a colleague of mine, na breathe lang, no? Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Masyado tayong nakafocus sa anxiety, worries, but take it easy. Calm down a little bit and then breathe. Yun.
Thank you, Dr. Nelly. Dr. Erickson?
I still believe that even we are in this crisis, they call it the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, we can still perform our duties and responsibilities to teach and to deliver what we're supposed to do in universities and colleges, but also providing a very accommodating and very supportive environment for the learning of our students, even in the virtual classroom. So let's be positive and let's be flexible in this particular setting. So that's it.
Thank you. Once again, thank you very much to our resource speakers, Dr. Aimee, Dr. Nelly, and Dr. Erickson. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be our resource speakers for this afternoon, despite your very busy schedule. Thank you very much once again.
Bye.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye,
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you.
That ends our webinar for this afternoon. We hope to see you next time in our future sessions. For this afternoon, we have appreciated the role of our faculty members as our frontliners into detecting and really knowing the status of the mental health of our students. And we hope that with this webinar, we are able to come up with policies in the universities or schools that would really support the guidance and wellness centers of our institutions. With that, we end this webinar with words of thanks to all our audiences, both in Facebook and on YouTube. We hope to see you in our next webinars sponsored by the HECBOL, the Commission on Higher Education, and in partnership with the Ministry of Basic and Higher Education of BARMM. To those of you who have pre-registered, we will be sending you a feedback form, and once completed, we will be sending an electronic copy of your certificate. You will have only until 5 p.m. on June 25 to respond to the feedback form. Stay safe and have a great day.